All right, so get ready because we're diving into something pretty unexpected. We're going to be looking at a simple story about a day at the beach.
A day at the beach.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. A beach story. What's so deep about that? But stick with us because we're going to uncover some pretty clever language learning strategies that are kind of tucked away in the narrative.
Oh, cool.
And trust me, there are some really surprisingly deep connections to the way we learn and just interact with the world.
It's interesting how something that seems so straightforward, like a story, can be a vehicle for exploring these complex ideas about learning.
Right.
It's like there's this hidden curriculum drawing you in with this experience that everyone can relate to, and then it subtly reveals all these insights along the way.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the first things that I noticed was this emphasis on repetition in the story.
Uh-huh.
The source material actually encourages you to read the story twice.
Oh, interesting.
The first time slowly, and then a little bit faster the second time around. And it seems basic, but I'm guessing there's more to it than meets the eye.
Absolutely. You see, repetition, it's not just busy work.
Right.
There's some serious brain science behind it.
Oh, cool.
When we encounter new information again and again, especially in different contexts and at different speeds, our brains actually start to form these stronger neural connections.
Wow.
Think of it like this. Imagine a faint path in a field. The more you walk that path, the more defined it becomes, the easier it is to follow.
I see.
Repetition in language learning kind of does the same thing for our brains, carving out pathways that make it easier to retrieve and to use new words and phrases.
So it's not just about like mindless repetition, it's like strategic reinforcement.
Right.
Yeah, I can see how that would apply to language learning for sure.
Yeah.
You know, it makes me think about other skills too, like playing an instrument or learning a new sport. Repetition is crucial in all sorts of learning.
It is.
Yeah, definitely.
And, when it comes to language learning, there are all sorts of repetition that are especially effective, like spaced repetition and active recall.
Yeah.
These techniques, they involve revisiting information at these increasing intervals, and that forces your brain to work to retrieve it from memory, which strengthens those neural pathways even more.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like flexing those mental muscles. The more you work them, the stronger they get.
Right. Okay. Repetition is key. I got it. But there's another technique that the story uses that I thought was really interesting.
Okay.
Highlighting certain vocabulary words,
Mm-hmm.
like seaside, unexpected, crying, search, and waves. But it's not just throwing random words at us, is it?
Not at all. This is a fantastic example of learning vocabulary in context.
Okay.
So instead of just trying to memorize isolated words from a list, encountering them inside of a story makes them so much stickier.
Yeah.
Think about it. If you just saw the word seaside on a flashcard, it would just be a bunch of letters, right? But when you read it in a story about a family going to the beach,
Yeah.
you can picture the scene, you can hear the sound of those waves.
Yeah.
You can almost feel that sand between your toes,
Right.
All those sensory details, they help anchor that word in your memory.
It's like the word becomes alive.
Yeah.
You're not just memorizing the definition, you're kind of experiencing it.
Precisely. And there's another layer to this, too.
Okay.
The story format helps illustrate those little nuances of language.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, we might think seaside and beach are basically the same, interchangeable,
Right.
but they actually give you slightly different images in your head.
It's interesting.
Seaside often makes you think about a town or a resort area,
Oh, okay.
while beach is much more general.
Yeah.
By coming across these words in very specific contexts, we can start to develop this deeper understanding of their subtle shades of meaning.
That's what makes language so fascinating, those nuances.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the difference between knowing the ingredients of a dish versus actually tasting it.
Yeah.
The story really brings those nuances to life. What about the word search? That one seems pretty straightforward.
Even with simple words, the context can reveal those deeper layers.
Yeah.
So in this story, search suggests this much more deliberate, focused effort than just looking.
Oh, okay.
The boy isn't just casually looking for this toy. He's driven by this sense of urgency,
Right.
by determination, and the story helps us to grasp that distinction, which enriches our understanding of that word.
That's a good point. It's not just about knowing the definition. It's about how the word is used in real life.
Right.
Okay, now let's talk about Emma, our main character.
Okay.
There's this moment in the story where she helps this little boy find his lost toy.
Yeah.
It's a small action, but I feel like it says a lot about her character.
It's amazing how the story reveals Emma's empathy and her problem-solving skills without directly stating them. We see her react to the boy's distress, we see her taking action to help,
Yeah.
and we can kind of infer these character traits just from her behavior.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but it's a powerful way of telling a story.
It's like we're learning about Emma the same way we learn about people in real life, just by watching what they do and how they interact with other people.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, how does this connect back to language learning?
This ties into the importance of nonverbal communication, which
Hmm.
is often overlooked in language learning.
Right.
You see, in real conversations, not everything is always explicitly stated.
Yeah.
We have to rely on facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice to get the full meaning of what someone's trying to say.
Oh, interesting.
So this story subtly reinforces how important these skills are
Right.
by showing us how Emma's actions, even without words, convey her empathy and her willingness to help.
So it's not just about understanding the words themselves.
Right.
It's about understanding those unspoken messages behind them. It's like reading between the lines, both in stories and in real life.
Exactly. And this brings us to an even deeper level of this story.
Okay.
The themes that are kind of beneath the surface.
Uh-huh.
We see kindness, a sense of community, and finding joy in these simple things.
Yeah.
And they might seem totally unrelated to language learning at first, but they are actually deeply intertwined with the whole experience of learning a new language.
That's what I love about these deep dives, finding those unexpected connections.
Yeah.
So tell me more about how you see these themes connecting to language learning.
Well, just imagine this. When you learn a new language, you're not just picking up new words and grammar rules.
Right.
You're opening this door to a whole new culture,
Uh-huh.
to a whole new way of seeing the world.
Yeah.
You're connecting with people from different backgrounds,
Yeah.
experiencing their stories,
Yeah.
and broadening your horizons.
So it's like this story is subtly reminding us that language learning is about so much more than just the technical side of things.
Yeah.
It's about building these bridges, fostering empathy, and appreciating the beauty of connecting with other people.
Precisely. It's about embracing the unexpected, just like Emma did when she met that little boy crying on the beach.
Right.
It's about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and being open to new experiences,
Yeah.
both in terms of language and culture. And it's about recognizing that even these small acts of kindness, like helping someone find their toy, can actually have a huge impact.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And let's not forget the joy that comes with discovering something new when you're learning a language.
Yes.
Remember how happy that little boy was when Emma helped him find his toy?
Oh,
That sense of accomplishment, of overcoming a challenge, that's such a huge part of learning a language.
absolutely. Every new word you learn, every grammar structure that you finally master,
Yeah.
it's like a little victory that keeps you motivated and keeps you moving forward.
Yeah.
Like finding a little hidden treasure on the beach, a nugget of knowledge that enriches your understanding of the whole world.
Speaking of finding those treasures, I want to go back to those language learning techniques embedded in the story.
Okay.
We talked about repetition and learning vocab and context,
Yeah.
but there's this other subtle technique going on here,
Yeah.
the use of imagery and those sensory details.
Ah, yes. The story's full of these vivid descriptions
Right.
that really engage our senses. We can
Yeah.
practically hear those waves crashing, feel that sun on our skin, even smell the salty air.
It's like we're right there on the beach with Emma.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that's not just for style, it's another powerful tool for learning.
It is. When we involve our senses in the learning process,
Yeah.
it makes those memories so much stronger and makes the information more meaningful.
Uh-huh.
Think about it. It's so much easier to remember a word like seaside when you can actually picture it in your mind,
Right.
hear the waves, feel the sand. It's so much richer than just looking at the word by itself.
Yeah, it's not just about passively reading the word or hearing it.
Right.
It's about actively engaging with it
Ac-
and creating that multi-sensory experience that brings it to life. It's like the difference between reading a recipe
Yes.
and actually cooking that dish.
Exactly.
The hands-on, the smells, the tastes, they all make for a deeper understanding.
And appreciation.
Yeah, exactly.
And that same thing applies to language. The more we immerse ourselves in the language, engage our senses, and connect it to our own personal experiences, the more fluent we become and the more confident.
This seemingly simple story about a day at the beach is packed with language learning wisdom.
Isn't it?
Who knew there were so many layers to unpack?
It really shows the power of storytelling as a teaching tool.
Yeah,
And it reminds us that we can learn anywhere, anytime, even in the most unexpected places.
that's so true.
And, we often think about language learning as something that happens in a classroom or
Right.
with a textbook.
Yeah.
But this story shows us that it can really happen anywhere if we just open ourselves up to it.
Sometimes I get so caught up in studying grammar and memorizing vocabulary that I forget to just experience the language.
It happens.
Yeah.
But the world is full of these opportunities to learn. They're hidden in plain sight.
That's true.
A conversation with someone you don't know, a song on the radio, even a billboard you pass on the street.
Yeah.
They can all teach us something if we're paying attention.
Right. So it's like we need to be curious. We need to be willing to explore
Yes,
and be open to learning from these unexpected sources.
absolutely.
It's about seeing the world as our classroom and taking every chance we get to learn something new.
Precisely. And that's the beauty of learning a language.
Yeah.
It's a journey of lifelong discovery. It's about always pushing ourselves, challenging what we think we know, and opening ourselves up to completely new perspectives.
Huh.
It's about connecting with people and cultures and ideas from all over the world.
And let's not forget about having fun while we're doing it.
It should be fun.
Yeah, I think we forget about that part sometimes.
You do.
Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on something that really struck me about the story. This
Yeah.
idea that finding joy in the simple things is somehow connected to learning a language. I have to admit, that one really threw me for a loop.
It might seem like a stretch at first, but it's really quite profound when you think about it.
Okay.
Think about that moment when Emma helps that little boy find his lost toy.
Yeah.
It's such a simple act of kindness,
Right.
but it brings so much joy to both of them.
Yeah.
That feeling of connection, of making a difference,
Yeah.
that's something that can be incredibly motivating in language learning.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
When we experience those little victories when we're learning a language.
Yeah.
Like finally understanding a difficult grammar rule
Yeah.
or having a good conversation with a native speaker.
Right.
It gives us that same kind of joy, that sense of accomplishment.
Exactly. And those positive emotions can really fuel our desire to learn more,
Yeah.
to keep pushing ourselves, and to embrace those challenges that come with learning a new language. It's a reminder that language learning isn't just about getting the knowledge.
Right.
It's about enriching our lives and connecting with other people on a deeper level.
Wow, I'd never thought about it like that.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's like the story subtly reminding us that language learning is about so much more than just the technical side.
Mm-hmm.
It's about connecting with people, experiencing new cultures, and just broadening our understanding of the world.
Precisely. It's about embracing the journey and finding joy in the process.
Yeah.
And sometimes the most profound lessons actually come from the simplest stories.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get so focused on becoming fluent
Uh-huh.
that I forget to just appreciate those small steps I take and the things I learn along the way.
It's easy to get so caught up in where you're going that you forget to enjoy the journey.
Right.
But those small moments, those unexpected discoveries, those are the things that make it all worthwhile.
You know what? This deep dive has really changed the way I think about language learning.
Oh, that's great.
It's not just about cramming vocab or mastering grammar rules.
Right.
It's about opening ourselves up to new experiences, connecting with others, and finding joy in the process.
Exactly.
And that's what makes it such a rewarding journey.
It really is.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different aspects of this beach story
We have.
and how it connects to language learning, but I think there's one more key element we should touch on before we wrap up this part of our deep dive.
All right, what's that?
Well, it's something that might seem obvious, but it's actually quite profound when we apply it to the context of language learning.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It's the idea of simply paying attention.
Ah, yes. Being present in the moment.
Exactly. Just like how Emma was attentive to the little boy's distress and noticed his lost toy, we need to be attentive to the language we're trying to learn.
That's a fantastic point. It's so easy to get distracted or to just go through the motions without truly absorbing the language.
Right.
But when we really pay attention to the details, to the sounds, to the rhythms, to the nuances of the language, that's when the real magic happens.
Absolutely. It's like we need to become active listeners, not just passive recipients of information.
Precisely. And this applies to every aspect of language learning, from listening to conversations, to reading texts, to even practicing our pronunciation.
So it's not just about the quantity of time we spend with the language.
Right.
It's about the quality of our attention.
Exactly. It's about being present, engaged, and receptive to the language.
I think this ties back to what we were discussing earlier about finding joy in the process.
How so?
Well, when we're truly paying attention, we're more likely to notice those small moments of delight,
Ah, I see what you mean.
the beauty of a well-crafted sentence, the humor in a clever turn of phrase, the satisfaction of finally grasping a difficult concept,
Yes, those little sparks of joy can really fuel our passion for language learning.
and keep us motivated even when the going gets tough.
Absolutely. It's like we're training our brains to seek out those moments of delight and to appreciate the richness of the language we're learning.
So our challenge to the listener is this: become a more attentive language learner.
Yes. Pay attention to the details, savor the sounds, and embrace those moments of discovery.
And I guarantee you'll find that the journey becomes so much more enjoyable and rewarding.
Absolutely. Because language learning is not just about reaching a destination, it's about enjoying the journey every step of the way.
Well said. All right, I think it's a great place to pause for now.
Sounds good.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive,
We have.
exploring the hidden depths of this seemingly simple beach story.
And unearthing some valuable insights about language learning.
From the power of repetition to the importance of context, sensory learning, and even the joy of simple discoveries.
It's amazing how much we can learn from even the most unexpected sources.
It is. So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive, where we'll delve even further into this fascinating story.
And uncover even more gems of language learning wisdom.
We'll be right back after a short break.
Sounds good.
So it's not just about passively reading or listening. It's about actively engaging with the language,
Uh-huh.
creating that multi-sensory experience that brings it to life.
Right.
It's like the difference between reading a recipe and actually cooking.
Yes.
Like it's this hands-on, the smells, the taste,
Yeah,
they all contribute to a deeper understanding.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the same thing applies to language.
It does.
The more we immerse ourselves, the more we engage our senses,
Right.
the more we connect it to our own experiences, the more fluent and confident we'll become.
Definitely.
It seems like this simple story about a beach day is packed with all these little bits of wisdom about language learning.
It's kind of amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, who knew there were so many layers to peel back?
It really is a testament to the power of storytelling
Right.
as a way of teaching. And it reminds us that learning can happen anywhere, anytime, even when we least expect it.
Right, which brings us to another interesting point, I think.
Okay.
We often think of language learning as something that happens in a classroom, right?
Yeah, with a textbook.
Or with a textbook, yeah.
Hmm.
But this story shows us that it can happen anywhere, as long as we're open to it.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I get so caught up in grammar rules and memorizing lists of words,
Oh, I know the feeling.
that I forget to just experience the language.
Yeah, we all do that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's easy to get stuck in that rut.
Right.
But, the world's full of opportunities to learn.
It really is.
They're just hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
Like a conversation with a stranger, a song you hear on the radio, even a billboard you see when you're driving.
It's true.
If we just open our eyes and ears, they can all teach us something new.
Yeah, we need to cultivate that curiosity, be willing to explore.
Absolutely. A sense of adventure,
Yeah.
being receptive to those unexpected lessons.
So it's about seeing the world as our classroom.
Yes.
Taking advantage of every opportunity to learn something new.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of language learning. It's this lifelong journey of discovery.
Yeah.
You're constantly pushing your boundaries, challenging your assumptions, and opening yourself up to different perspectives,
Right.
connecting with people, cultures, ideas from all over the world.
And not to mention having fun while we're at it. Right.
Oh, for sure. That's the most important part.
Yeah. We forget about that sometimes.
We do get so serious about it.
I know, right?
But it should be enjoyable.
All right, well, before we wrap this up,
Okay.
there's one thing that really stuck with me from the story.
Hmm.
And that was the idea that finding joy in the simple things is somehow connected to language learning.
Uh-huh.
I have to admit, that one kind of threw me for a loop.
It might seem a bit strange at first,
Yeah.
but it's actually quite profound.
Okay.
If you think about that moment where Emma helps the little boy find his toy,
Yeah.
it's just a small, simple act of kindness,
Right.
but it brings so much joy to both of them.
And that feeling of connection, of making a difference,
Yeah.
it's something that can be incredibly motivating in language learning.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like when we have those little victories in language learning,
Right.
when we finally understand a tough grammar rule or we have a conversation with a native speaker and it goes well,
Yes.
we get that same kind of joy.
Exactly. You feel that sense of accomplishment.
Yes.
And those positive feelings
Mhm.
can really drive us to learn more,
Right.
to keep pushing ourselves, to embrace the challenges.
Right.
It's a reminder that language learning isn't just about accumulating knowledge.
Yeah.
It's about making our lives richer, connecting with others on a much deeper level.
Wow, I never thought of it like that.
It's a different way of looking at it, isn't it?
It really is. Like the story is subtly telling us that language learning is about so much more than just the technical stuff.
It's about connecting with people, experiencing different cultures, and just expanding our understanding of the world around us.
Exactly. It's about embracing the journey and
Yeah.
finding the joy in that process.
And sometimes those most profound lessons, they come from the simplest of stories.
That's so true.
Sometimes I get so focused on the goal of becoming fluent
Mm-hmm.
that I forget to appreciate all the small moments of learning and growth along the way.
It's easy to get fixated on the destination and forget to enjoy the scenery.
Exactly.
But those small moments, those unexpected discoveries,
Yeah.
those are the things that make the journey so rewarding.
This deep dive has really changed my perspective on language learning.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
It's not just about cramming words or mastering grammar.
Right.
It's about opening ourselves up to new experiences,
Yeah.
connecting with people, and finding joy in the process.
Exactly. That's what makes it such a rich and rewarding journey.
Okay, we've talked a lot about this beach story and how it relates to language learning.
We have covered a lot of ground.
But there's one more key element we should touch on before we move on.
All right. What's that?
It's something that seems pretty obvious,
Okay.
but it's actually quite profound when we think about it in the context of language learning.
I'm curious. Tell me more.
It's the simple act of paying attention.
Ah, yes. Being present and mindful.
Exactly. Just like how Emma was paying attention to the little boy's distress
Right.
and noticed his lost toy.
Uh-huh.
We also need to be attentive to the language we're trying to learn.
That's a fantastic point because it's so easy to get distracted
It is.
or just go through the motions without actually absorbing what we're learning.
Right.
But when we really pay attention to the sounds, the rhythms, the nuances,
Yeah.
that's when the magic really happens.
Right. We need to become active listeners, not just passive.
Exactly. And this is true for every part of language learning.
Right.
Listening to conversations,
Uh-huh.
reading, practicing our pronunciation.
So it's not just about how much time we spend with the language.
Right. It's not about quantity.
It's about how focused we are.
It's about the quality of our attention.
Exactly.
Being present, engaged, and truly receptive.
You know, I think this ties back to what we were talking about earlier, about finding joy in the process.
How so?
When we're really paying attention,
Yeah.
we're more likely to notice those little moments of delight.
I see what you mean.
The beauty of a well-written sentence,
Yeah.
the humor in a clever phrase, the satisfaction of finally understanding a difficult concept,
Yes. Those little sparks of joy that can fuel our passion for learning.
and keep us going when it gets tough.
Absolutely. It's like training our brains to recognize and savor those moments.
Right.
To appreciate the richness of the language.
So, to our listeners out there, our challenge to you is this. Become a more attentive language learner.
Yes, pay attention to those details.
Yeah.
Savor the sounds and embrace those moments of discovery.
And I guarantee you'll find that the journey is so much more enjoyable and rewarding.
Absolutely, because language learning isn't just about reaching the destination.
Right.
It's about savoring every step along the way.
Well said. I think this is a good place to take a pause.
Sounds good.
We've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive.
We have.
We explored all these hidden depths of this simple beach story.
And found some really valuable insights about language learning.
From repetition to context, sensory learning.
Even the joy of those simple discoveries.
Yeah, it's amazing what we can learn from even the most unexpected places.
It really is.
So stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive,
We'll be diving even deeper
where we'll explore even more of this fascinating story.
and uncover even more wisdom about language learning.
We'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Wow, I feel like we've uncovered so much from this simple story about a day at the beach.
It is amazing how much this story packs in,
Yeah.
repetition, vocabulary, sensory learning, empathy, cultural understanding,
Yeah, it's all there.
all woven together in this really captivating way.
It reminds us that learning isn't just a straight line.
Right.
It's this multifaceted journey that uses all parts of who we are. It's
Absolutely.
like we've been given this roadmap, not just for learning languages, but for learning about life in general.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah,
The biggest takeaway for me is how important it is to be curious,
right.
to have an open mind, and to be ready for anything.
To our listener out there, think about those simple stories, those everyday moments in your own life.
Yeah, what can you learn from them?
What hidden depths are there? What opportunities for learning are hiding right there in front of you?
What can you learn from the people you meet, the places you go, even the challenges you face?
Because learning doesn't just happen in a classroom or with a textbook.
It's happening all around us, constantly.
The key is to pay attention, keep our minds engaged
And our hearts open.
to all the possibilities for growth and discovery that are out there.
Beautifully said. Keep those ears open and never stop exploring.
Until next time.